Today we're going to look at something we haven't looked at before, and it's the actual application of ethics. How do you use ethics in real life?
Give
right?
to charity, donate blood.
Sure. Well, today we're going to be looking at two theories. They're not related, right? But they're both very important, right? The first one is called the reflective equilibrium. This one is about how do you make ethical decisions, right? This is very easy to explain. It's very simple. So basically, the whole idea behind the reflective equilibrium is this is the process by which you should arrive at your decisions, right? So let's say let's just take the trolley problem, right? You're in a moral dilemma, all right? Now there's two valid lines of reasoning, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, right? There's two valid lines of reasoning here. The first line of reasoning is that the first principle, right, is that save the most people. Utilitarian. Yep. That's the first line of valid reasoning, right? The second line of valid reasoning here would be something like, if everyone was allowed to kill for some sort of benefit, then society would devolve into chaos, right? Don't kill.
Exponentially better in 10 years.
Yeah, so don't kill. So what do you do when you're facing a dilemma where you have two lines of valid reasoning that contradicts, right? This is where the reflective equilibrium comes in, right? The reflective equilibrium is this ethical theory. It's the idea that you're always correct if and only if you are, well, first, these are like some pretty basic assumptions, right? You're a rational person, right? Second one is if you take into account all of the valid principles into consideration, right? You need to consider all of the relevant principles, right? And it's just, this is an exercise where by considering all of these principles, you then use your intuition. You then use your intuition to come to a conclusion, basically, right? So you have two principles, right? P1, P2, right? So just look at this for a while, right? And then think to yourself, okay, what does my intuition tell me? Well, for some people, their intuition might say, save the most people, but not if it requires you to kill someone, right? So then your intuition tells you that ultimately we should probably go with the second one, right? But it's not like we're just following a doctrine, right? If we only consider the top one, if we consider ourselves a utilitarian and we only consider the top one, then you're basically following a doctrine. That's not proper ethical reasoning, right? You're just applying a principle, and you're not considering the other possible arguments that could have an impact on this decision, right? So what the reflective equilibrium does is that you have to consider all the possible arguments for and against your decision, and then you let your intuition do the deciding, right? And you have to be, ideally you'd have to be detached and non-biased, right? But then that's the way in which we make ethical decisions, right? We have to consider everything, and then we let our intuition do the job, right? In this case, maybe our intuition might say, well, okay, 5 people is more lives, right? But we can't just kill a person whenever we like it, right? But here's the interesting thing about the reflective equilibrium, right? Is that our intuitions change based on the circumstances. So, for example, let's say instead of 5 people, right? Because right now, let's say it was 2, right? Let's say it was 1 person for 2, right? Then our intuition might say, well, okay, let's not kill this 1 person, right? 2 is like the stakes. The stakes are very low, right? I mean, not very low. It's like the ratio of stakes to sacrifice. It's like 2 to 1. And then our intuition might say, well, okay, do I really want to kill this person just to save 1 extra person? Probably not, right? But what if the stakes were a lot higher, right? What if it was the same question, but there was 1 million people, right? Then, I wonder whose intuition would tell you to not kill 1 million people, to not kill this 1 person to save 1 million, right? And so when we tune up the stakes, and we maintain the same sacrifices, we observe that our intuitions actually probably tip towards, the utilitarian side, right? Meanwhile, if we increase the sacrifices, right, like 5,000, right, then our intuition might go back down to like here, right? And so our intuition changes based on the circumstances as well, right? So That's how you make a moral decision, because like the important thing is just considering every factor of the argument, and that's what you should do. Now, obviously, this is heavily criticized for being subjective, right? Obviously, right? But it's, for most philosophers, this is the only rational game that you can play with ethics, right? This is the only thing that you should be able to do, and it's to consider everything and let your intuition mend these different principles, right? So, that's the reflective equilibrium, right? Why is it an equilibrium? It's because you're thinking of both sides, right? Or three sides, or all the sides. And it's reflective because you're really thinking about it. Getting your intuition working, right? Now let's talk about the